because we're so used to doing for others or how we're taught. And so and there's nothing wrong with that. There are beautiful things that we get from all of our experiences too. There's dark stuff and there's light stuff. But what do we hold on to that we feel expands us and catapults us? And what do we feel weighs us down or doesn't feel aligned? And it's really hard to tune into that when you don't know any better and you've been doing it for so long, and it just becomes so conditioned.
I believe that each and every one of us has the power within ourselves to create the life that we really want. And I want to help give you the tools to make that happen. I'm Danica Patrick, and I'm pretty intense.
So a word that I feel like probably everyone is dealing with at a high level and has been dealing with at a high level in 2020 is change. And so I think this is a great word that you brought up that we should talk about. And we've talked about transition and some other words, and you made a really good point of how change is different than transition. And I think that change, like you said, change is so much more sudden. And so I think it's a great word to talk about. I think that it's probably the biggest thing that everyone's dealing with, whether it's kids at home, work, losing your job, how you get your groceries, if you traveled, now you're not. I mean, there's so many things that have changed in 2020. And it's definitely a year of adapting. And so like, how do we adapt to change? How do we feel about change? How do we deal with change? And, what is it teaching us about ourselves when things change?
That's a good question.
And shoot, what is it teaching us about ourselves that needed to change?
Yeah.
Because I think 2020, while it's, everybody, it's like laugh, you come into the year, like it's going to be perfect year, perfect vision. Everything's going to be perfect, perfect vision, like all the glasses with the 2020. But the thing is that it actually is. Like, look at how many truths have been revealed about, institutions or social dynamics or relationships or who we are, what we want. There's been a lot of truths that have come out. This is a little bit of a hippie sort of thing to say, but it's that timelines are moving so fast right now. Like, it's the idea that there's infinite amount of timelines kind of existing at the same point at the same time, and depends on what decision you make, sort of transitions into a different timeline, sort of timeline dimension. And so we are clearly accelerating through timelines. Like things are happening so fast. I mean, when you chronologically go through what the hell has gone on in 2020,
that's true.
Like, I mean, shoot, it started off with fires in Australia, and like that seems like almost forgotten at this point in time because so much has happened. And then you think nothing else can happen. And then the whole state's on fire. And then, you can't, it's just been a year. So, is change something that is comfortable for you? Like, I mean, what has changed for you is maybe more important, or how do you feel about it? Or what is it about the word change that why did you mention that you want to say the word change? There's probably something sitting right there that you want to talk about.
Well, I mean, a lot's changed in my life. A lot's changing with my, through this year, through this experience. Like you said, it's almost forcing people into change. I mean, there was no choice in it, and we had to adapt and from businesses to families to relationships to, our climate to uncomfortable discussions and anger and joy and sadness and confusion. I just feel that it almost is like a year of feeling. It's super intense. feelings that maybe not all of us have been feeling, right, or ever been asked to feel in this way. And it's asked us to change. And I think that there are things that are happening and we are changing. And I think there are some things where it's kind of like we're waiting, right? We're just waiting to see which way it's going to go. But things like, when we were all quarantined here, in the United States, and seeing our blue skies bluer than we had ever experienced. Something that simple. And yet it was, I can't imagine. I can only speak on what it felt like for me, let alone for everyone else, what it was like. My stepdaughter is moved to Asheville, North Carolina. She's 27 years old, and she was alone out there, but has a great group of community of friends. But we didn't have children in our house, so where they were in school, and then they had to be with us. I can't imagine what that's like because I didn't have that. So it was just my husband and myself. And we were working on a lot of stuff on our marriage earlier this year in February. There was a lot of truths that came through from me through the work that I've been doing. And
we're always a little ahead of the curve. So
little did I know, it's like, gosh, it literally happened right 3 weeks afterwards. And then, COVID really hit us and shook us. And then, we had the closures but yeah, so Ben and I kind of we were a little, not ahead, but we were in some really uncomfortable space. And then we were like locked together for 30 days. And thankfully we had some of the tools that we had been working with, not only throughout the years, but there was a brutal time in February where I was being asked of myself to speak as truthfully as I can about all these feelings that I had been having or that had and was burying or holding or not wanting to acknowledge myself. So we kind of used that time to deepen our relationship in that vulnerable space. It was asking my husband, as I spoke those truths in February, it was asking him to do his own work, and not just our marriage therapy, and not just his own individual work that he does through books and yoga and meditation. His own practice is great, but for him to have someone to work with to help open him up in a way so he and I could communicate at a new level. Really from his heart. We were very lucky with that because things could have been very different if we didn't have that foundation going into that quarantine, because I've known so many relationships of all kinds that have changed since we had to be home or since we're not going to work. So there's good and bad. There's good things, and then there's people who have lost their lives, and it's how do we sit in that, and how do we hold the hope? How do we continue to know that every day is a new day, and we just feel that there's something here that is showing us something, and if you can take it in that way, have gratitude for having the slower, not working, for those times, and being able to kind of sit and process. But at the same time, the empathy and compassion for those who have lost lives, and where other things have uncovered themselves, like addiction and maybe the feelings that we just haven't wanted to really be in. It's like the discomfort was so extreme that I think it has brought a lot of light onto some dark that was in, whether it's within ourselves or in our households or what's happening around everything.
I think that change has also highlighted how important it is to flow and allow, which is something I feel like we all just really struggle with. We like our comfort zones. We not only like our comfortable, familiar patterns, but we also like our comfortable, familiar emotional sort of cocktails that we have when we repeat certain situations over and over again, emotionally or dynamically with people. So that's probably way too much for this, but we like familiarity. And so I know for myself, like certain things that have happened this year that I've done, better job of, is that when someone has to reschedule a podcast, or when some trip gets canceled, or when someone needs more time for something, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, XYZ this," and I go, "Oh, that's okay." I'm like, "It's 2020. Everybody's doing their best." Like it gives you, like, it's while I usually, I have this expression, it's a little bit straightforward, but expectations are a motherfucker. And that's because it's like my stupid example about expectations is that it's flying. There's not a lot of people that just love flying. Like, I think people can kind of enjoy like going, but like to like the experience of regular flying is, I think it's why it's so bad, is because they almost never exceed your expectations. I think that's why Southwest caught on, because they're like, oh wow, somebody can be funny. That's great. And somebody makes jokes and somebody's sarcastic. That's fun. But I think that generally when you go fly, you don't, even if you land early, you sometimes have to just wait for your gate. But you like never take off early. You very rarely get landed in somewhere like way earlier than you think, other than 15 minutes. And so, you generally get what you sign up for. So you're only usually disappointed. There's really not a lot of opportunity to have your expectation levels exceeded. So anyway, back to expectations are a mofo, is that, that we have to learn how to allow things to change. And so one of the things that I've actually so much has changed this year for sure, for myself, like everyone, but my life is, I'm done saying this because I don't want this to really, my life changes in ways that I would never expect every couple of years. You probably heard me say that a few times.
Yep.
And it has been true for a very long time. And part of it is like scary, and I don't really want it to be so dramatic anymore. But I also think it's because I'm always, there's an allowance for growth. And I realized I also do everything fast. And I know that sounds probably pretty stupid because I was a race car driver, but I do. I eat fast. I can talk fast. I think fast. I get in touch with my soul fast. I know truth fast. I I cook fast. Everything I do fast, and I process fast, and I grow fast. And so I, have had to kind of get a little bit familiar with change, because I've had so much of it. But it doesn't mean that the rate at which it's happening this year is comfortable. Like, it's not,
right. It's,
because it's just, you're being dropped in the deep end. You don't get you're not getting time this year to really be familiar with an environment before it shifts and transitions again, or before something gets stacked on top of it.
Right.
Like another thing. It might not be that thing changing again, but you just might have another thing to deal with. And so, I guess if I'm going to encompass, like, what's the lesson, like, this year has been, like, I think I've had so many lessons in empathy, is that to just understand for myself or for other people that if things are changing and shifting, to just like allow things with love and empathy and grace, and just trying to trust that everything that's meant to come our way is, and, if you're being a dick, you're probably going to get bad things. But if you're really trying to practice, like, being kind and loving, which I think most people are inherently good, then understand that, healing and growth and, good things are on its way, and just kind of trusting. It's like a trusting and allowing year, right? And we talk a lot about flow, and we've never done that. We haven't done that word, but I think flow could be its own episode because it's kind of its own thing, but it's in there, right? To just allow, instead of being so rigid with things. Why does something have to be one way? Right? Why? I think that's the thing that's happening this year too. Why? Like, ask yourself, why do I have to go to an office? I think a lot of people are like, oh, wow, I can work from home. Yeah. You're seeing people leaving big cities at a rapid rate, going to some sort of second size cities, third size cities to, like, have a better lifestyle and something more affordable maybe. And just, there's people that are like, really allow these changes to come into your life and shine and just show you a different way. And it doesn't mean that you have to stick with it. It can go back, or it can take new form from what it is right now, but maybe it's better.
Well, I think that everything you said is spot on. I mean, expectations, just to kind of circle back to that, being a motherfucker, it's like, I love it. And it's true, because when you put expectations on things, I mean, expectations are different than goals, but our ego likes to use expectations. And so when we do that, it creates rigidity. It creates more of like, like a competition, or if it allows for more judgment to come in, because life and this experience that we're having, we are being schooled majorly that this is not about there is a fix or expectations, or we can hope, we can unite, we can come together as a collective, we can do whatever we can empathize more and hold more compassion. But putting like, well, it better be here, and if it's not, we're all doomed. It's like, it can put you in such a space of fear. And I think like being contracted, that you can't flow. So there's that level. And I think that, I love that you brought up expectations, because it's something that I had to let go of a couple of years ago. And I wasn't even aware that I was putting these super high level expectations onto things. And when you do that, it doesn't allow for flow, and it is super rigid, and it doesn't allow for mistakes. It doesn't allow for, just the humanness, and that we are not supposed to be perfect, and we're not supposed to be getting it right every time as much as we want to, right? On a small or grand scale of things, if we're okay to just be in the discomfort and learn what lessons are coming through. Like you said, a lot of people are saying they're changing their lifestyle. They're moving differently because they can work remotely. I wonder how it's kind of going to look on the corporate side of things with all the big buildings that we have.
Oh man, yeah.
I had this discussion with my dad, and I was like, I wonder what they're going to do with those, because I would think for corporations, it would be more affordable probably to have some people work from home, and not paying that large overhead. Yeah. Anyways, that's just I was just like, that's good. This is going to be interesting. And then what can we do good with that, right? And dream in and have some new, I don't know, just a new way of being. Yeah. So I do think that the pause it's asked for change. We are changing, whether it's within our family household, in our relationship dynamics, within our work, within our environment. Change is here and it's happening. And so how do we go about it? Are we going to do change with, rigidity and fear or being pissed, or are we going to do it as gracefully as possible, with empathy, with compassion, with reverence? I feel there's a lot coming through around having just deep respect for our earth and the planet and all of us as a collective, and that we are all so different, and embracing our differences. And yet, gosh, we're not here to be like everyone else, right? And we're here supposed to be our authentic selves, and we can unite in that way where there isn't that level of I am higher and you are lower. So yeah, it's brought in so much around that. And I myself, I'm looking to switch my living situation. And you know that I've been here for 22 years. So I'm looking to move to Colorado, and have been feeling into that. And I've actually been able to have the space to feel into it, because business has slowed down for me here. I've had the time to feel into other spaces. So that's where I'm like, how can I find the gratitude versus things have shifted for the company that I have, and what can I do with that? And my mom's my business partner, and she and I just really have been asked to be truthful with each other and how we're feeling within this unknown space, and what direction do we want to go, and being truthful in that space with compassion and empathy and reverence. So yeah, it's changes here.
I feel like what we could each talk about, like the final idea on change to sort of make it good, is to just simply talk about perspective. And so we have the ability to look at something, and this is why stories, old stories, imagine how much they change. But then when you realize that you and I could be observing the same situation at the exact situation at the same time, and you and I will each have a different story to tell from it. So that depends on our lens. That is our lens, and we all see the world through our own private lens, and it's exclusive to you only. And it colors everything that you do and everything you see and everything that you experience. And so we have the ability then to shift that wherever and however we want to, or sometimes we need to. And so I think that what we can do is change the way that we look at change and shift our perspective to going, because like one of the things I think that's really sustained me in my life and allowed, as I've said, and this is like, I've had so much change, is that I immediately think of it like, oh shit. And then I think, well, maybe it's going to be better than I could ever expect.
Yeah.
Because I'm only able to I'm no different than anyone else. Familiarity is nice, but I also have had I also have the perspective that it could be better than I could ever expect. And since I'm not there yet, and let's say there is the better is coming, which it usually is. Let's say that I've never experienced that. Otherwise I'd know. Otherwise I'd be excited about it. And so I think with change, it's not actually that we're so afraid of change. Let's see. I think that it's actually more about mourning the death of what's going.
That's true.
Right. So when something changes, you just like, you can look at it like, okay, something like, I don't think we're all so scared of change. It's that we're afraid. It's that we're leaving something behind, and there is a death happening.
Mm-hmm. And that's also so familiar too. So we know it so well. So that's where that death. It's you're losing what
we love familiarity. Right.
Yeah.
But what if it could be better? And so, it's more maybe about kind of honoring where you've been and having the perspective that it could be better than I could ever expect. Just start telling yourself that, fake it till you believe it. I very much believe that you can do that. And so, we can learn through repetition. So if you just say that to yourself enough, you'll start to believe it.
Yeah.
And, that's how your subconscious is programmed. Like, the simple example is like, when you're learning how to walk, you got to really think about it. But then you don't think at all how to walk now once you're an adult, or much younger than an adult, because your subconsciousness has programmed it. Just like it's programmed how you drive to work every day. Of course that's changed, but these are the things that, like, there's a lot of things that get programmed. And so we need to reprogram, and one of the ways of doing that is through repetition. And so that's why they tell you to do something for 30 days or 60, they do this for 21 days. Cause they want, it's about the repetition that helps you to make that change. It's like rewiring, reprogramming your brain is what you really need to do. So, so I think that it's really just about looking at change in a different way.
Some people look at change as a good thing, and some people look at it as a bad thing. And I think we get to choose. And if we can see more of the opportunity and what is good about change, or the unknown of change, but the good of the unknown, right? Like we can manifest, if we can, whatever that can be, and finding the gratitude in the change that will support. So it's not like we're totally like, it's like really find those little nuggets of where can you find those real tangible gratitude places, because those are the seeds that are going to be planted that open up the subconscious to really create that level of like, let's rewire those neural pathways and create a new future that, just like you said, is very unknown to us. And what we don't know can be extremely scary. So there's a level of surrender. There's a level of flow, letting go of the judgment, and definitely what you said, changing our relationship with change, like how we feel about it. And if we can see that and really have, like a new lens, and being open to sit with that. And also know that we can change again and change again. I mean, that's all, it's a part of our free will, is that we have the ability to do that. So, It's
a powerful year.
Sure is a powerful year.
What a time to be alive. That's what I've said so many times. Sometimes I maybe didn't say that so often, but
yeah,
but it is.
it is.
It is.
It's an incredible,
Pretty amazing time to be alive.
To be alive, and we're all in this together. I'm glad I have you
I'm glad I have
with
you.
me, and we're together sharing.
Teacher.
Yeah.
We do words of the year every year. You started this, and we've done our words in the past for the podcast. So it's time to do this year's word of the year. And I like that it's actually, we've had some time to be with it. And they're really powerful. And so yours is interiority, which I'm only laughing because I'm like, I remember when you told me about this, we were in Hawaii and you told me about what word you wanted for the word of the year you were thinking about. And I'm like, what's that mean?
Well, I didn't know what it meant either. So I was right there with you.
How did you pick it? How do you pick interiority? Sounds like an interior designer word.
It actually does. I didn't even think of that. I mean, if I could have had my mind around it.
But you're very artistic.
But this came through Instagram, through an Instagram story. I follow someone called Being is Beautiful. I think that's her handle.
It is. Yep.
And Kylie.
Yep.
Anyways, she's amazing, and she has such light. I've never met her or anything. I love what she shares on Instagram, her words.
I started following her recently myself.
Yeah, her healing journey, and she really dives deep into feeling in the body and in our wounds and in enlightenment and in the shadow, light and dark, and kind of all of these things. And literally she was working on, if I remember correctly, writing a book or a part of a course, because she has a course that she does with her twin sister on health coach. You can become a health coach. So anyway, so I was following her, and it was on her stories, and she was kind of had this diagram, and it was going through all these things that we would feel like into our bodies, and things, whether they're triggers or just experiences, but like, you feel something from it. You have some sort of reaction. And the center was interiority, and it like links into interiority. And I was like, what is that? So
interiority is at the middle of the sort of expressions of the body. It's like getting all the way to the core. It's saying the core. Okay.
It's at least in that diagram when I watched it, that's what it was. And so I took a snapshot of her story because I knew it was going to be down. And I literally went into work that day and showed it to my mom. And I was like, I think I found my word. And I said it to her, and she was like, what does that mean? And I'm like, I wasn't sure, but I looked it up in the dictionary. And I mean, I could actually feel what it was. And I understood from what she was describing, like how she was getting to it. But I really wanted to understand the definition of it. And it really is our inner self. It's getting into our authentic inner self. It's the essence, our soul, our what we were born with when we came here, what we were before we were born, but then we come into the human body. So I'm being pretty literal. It's not soul, but it's like tapping into the essence of who we are. And so in order to do that, it has a little bit of a scientific form around interiority, and it's just really holding space to tap into your authentic self and be willing to be present with your experiences, feelings, emotions, consciousness, subconsciousness, triggers, relationships, and being really like holding space around that. And so when I heard that word, I thought, well, that's right up my alley. And I wanted to advance this. So I thought that would really hold me accountable. And I thought it would really, because there are times where I can go into those spaces for my own inward journey that I love. And I've been on this healing journey for quite some time, at least 6 years, but I wanted to go deeper, and I wanted to be more present with it. And I wanted something that had like the oomph that would give me that. It's hard to say, a little bit. I actually need more structure. I'm super flowy and fluid, and interiority offered me a little bit more depth and grounding and structure to stay tuned in and tapped into that work.
This is where we're really opposite, because I do so well. I need to have a format where it allows me to just free flow. But what I'm feeling from or what it seems like I'm understanding about the word interiority, if I could maybe even explain it in the way that makes sense to me, is that interiority is perhaps you said the word essence, but that's still kind of like a magical word that we don't really completely understand, or, it's not a really common like, oh, that's your essence. But so it's maybe just simply who you are before anything imprinted on you, before your parents did anything, before any friends did anything to you, any partners did anything to you. It's you before all your wounds. It's like, every trigger, every projection, every wound, every little thing that happens to us that is undesirable is linked to the core, which is the interiority of it all. And so it's about getting to that, right? Is that right?
Yeah, really connecting to your authentic self.
Yeah,
if you want it, so we don't use essence or soul, it's authentic self.
Yeah.
I feel it's a tool that supports you to say, I'm doing my interiority work to find and connect to my authentic self. And what is that? Because we're so used to doing for others or how we're taught. And so and there's nothing wrong with that. There are beautiful things that we get from all of our experiences too. There's dark stuff and there's light stuff. But what do we hold on to that we feel expands us and catapults us? And what do we feel weighs us down or doesn't feel aligned? And it's really hard to tune into that when you don't know any better and you've been doing it for so long and it just becomes so conditioned. So so that's
what have you learned?
I have my voice. It's been really finding my voice, and I couldn't use my voice in the way that I've been able to now until I did the true daily practice of my own interiority work, because then I'm not speaking. So when we talk about feeling, right? Like always, like if I'm in my head and then I shut that down and then I feel from here and I speak from my heart, but it's, really knowing my authentic self and being with her and feeling her and embodying her. And honestly, because I kind of drop in and out pretty easily because I'm not as confident. I'm not as secure. I'm not as familiar. I just haven't been with my authentic self my whole life, to be honest. When I was little, sure. But then as I kind of put more layers on or conditioned and judged myself and labeled myself, whatever those things are, I'd protect myself and I'd become a little bit more armored and I'd act a certain way and be really polite and kind, Stacey, and empathetic. But I kind of lost the free, fluid, just like her strength that I've always known, but I kind of tuned it out because I didn't feel worthy of having that innate strength.
That power.
Yeah, the power. I thought, honestly, you had to learn the power, or you'd have to learn the confidence, or you had to do these things to build it. And they're all real truths that you need to do those things as well. But when it's your authentic self, from my experience, it is truly like, it's not a learned thing. It is there. And so when you connect from that space, then when you speak from that space, it is different. I mean, I can ask you that. You've known me for how many years? So do you feel as I communicate that I'm communicating more clearly, or do you feel that I am stronger with my words? I don't know. I'm asking.
You're more direct, and you're also a little bit more confident to be free. Like I remember in the very beginning, like I used to try and get you to get drunk so often and you would not. I'm like, let go, man, just relax.
Free.
Yeah. So it's sort of like having the confidence to just let go too.
Yeah.
Right. As much as
totally,
that I think that was a thing too for you too. So
1,000% because of that perception. So I was very used to having this very proper, good intended. That's all real. That's all there. But I had put on a disguise, so I couldn't be seen fully because I didn't want to see myself fully. So it's like, how can I even speak from my authentic self if I haven't been with my authentic self? And how can I kind of take those shields off and be comfortable in the discomfort and be comfortable in the parts of myself that maybe that I labeled once that still have their unique quirks, and embrace them and know that it's not about being perfect. It's actually loving our imperfections. And then we can connect with others in that way. And we're so much softer and more empathetic and open in that space. And so kind of as we talk about letting go, when it's a valid point when you bring that up, that how fluid I feel myself to be. There for sure in my teens and 20s, I was a lot more rigid and controlled. And a lot of that comes from codependency, to control my environment and control situations and be that people pleaser and be that perfect and not get, drunk, and allow myself in a space where, so I can feel safe, and so I can feel that I'm presenting myself. And so
it's
letting
all
go
part of the
is
mask. It's part of the armor. So, as you get more to your authentic self, you need less armor. There's no planning. There's no apologizing. There's no, it's just kind of like, which was like that first time that we were at that party and you called the next day to apologize. I'm like, for what? It was awesome. So I think that's, when we have a deep insecurity, our ego flips it and projects deep into the other direction. Right. So if you didn't want to let go, you kept it really, you just, there's like a cover up for it. It's the mask to not go to the place that you're scared to go.
Totally. That's the perfect description of it.
I think what's important though with all this is that we can help unpack, because it kind of fast forwards the learning process, I think, because when we started this journey, it's not like anyone was like, okay, so this is what, these are some actual ways, or this is my experience for how I actually get to this place of knowing my authentic self. Instead, it was just like reading quotes, reading some books, and like listening to some YouTube videos, and like watching Super Soul Sunday. And all of a sudden you're just kind of like, I want to get more enlightened. I want to expand. And you're like, it was like, you just like thrown into the abyss. But I think it could be really helpful to talk about what we've done to get to know our authentic self. That's the tangible shit that people can do something with.
Yeah. Well,
otherwise there are a lot of big words with. Again.
I agree. And it's get down to what can we do to support that? And it's definitely not where I sit around and I'm thinking I'm going to do my interiority work today.
Right.
So I love that you always break this down so people have tangible action plans.
Yeah.
So for me, it is getting quiet. It's being able to have space to connect with her, to connect with my authentic self. So it is for sure journaling, it's hiking. I also allowing myself to do things that light me up. Like where do I really feel in my authentic self without even being in the mind? I'm just feeling it. And for me, it's nature. I'm always there. When we're together and we're having these conversations and being super open and vulnerable, I feel seen. And so surrounding myself by my loved ones that I love and I cherish, those support this type of work. It can also be, some people might not understand it, and that's okay. And so that's where we can get clear to have some boundaries. Because this work does take some solo practice, and it does take community as well. So for me, therapy for sure has always been a part of my practice. Having someone that I can talk to that can reflect back, that actually isn't connected to anyone in my family or anyone in my life. They're just literally there holding that space. And then, as you know, we talked about Dusty, but I've done some beautiful body work. I work with Adam and Elisa doing the soul work, which has been a lot of finding and connecting to that higher self, like my soul and my voice, which also allows me to feel and be with my authentic self. So all of that work I've been doing for about 6 years, and then I continue to add on to it. Sadie, you've done a lot of work with Sadie Adams out in Venice Beach. She's incredible. She does a lot of energetic work. For me, it's these are things that have helped me break down a lot of the hard armor I put on that I wasn't even aware of. I could say, oh yeah, I put that up, or I was trying to act or be a certain way, but the armor is so protected, and you're just not aware you're doing it. So the layers just continue to come.
The ego acts so much faster
Yeah.
than the soul, right?
Yeah.
So it's like constantly coming into action before there's a chance for anything to be caught. So it's an effort to get past the ego.
It's a huge effort, and also to be in that space and notice when your ego is coming into play, and notice. So we've talked about fear before, and so fear for me, that's something Sadie taught me, is to use fear as my teacher. And fear for me always was for me to retreat, like in my turtle shell, like, woo, you don't go into that, you don't look at it, and be with it. And that is a huge tool. And I know it's simple. It's not even an action. I mean, it's an action of us just being with a feeling, and it's the fear and sitting with that. And so my first experience of fear is typically it'll go to like a triggered or a wounded space, maybe where it's coming from, or an insecurity. And I acknowledge that. I just acknowledge it. And you can either journal this through, or now I'm at a space where I'm kind of like, I can feel it. And I see, oh, that's where that's coming from when I was younger, or just being insecure. And then I go into the depths of it. And then I use the fear, and I'm like, oh, I'm just being nervous how I'm going to look, or if I fail, or what people are going to think. And now I get to choose, what do I do with that? Do I move forward, or do I choose not to? But normally before, I would just shut it down. And typically now I always
so you like just
move forward.
Meaning like you just didn't participate in it, or you just like withdrew?
Yeah.
Wow.
Kind of like our slip and slide. I mean, I'm talking about
Oh,
simple things.
Oh man, the slip and slide. That's a funny story. So our friend Steph had a slip and slide in her backyard for her boys. She has 3 boys, and you run at it, and you have your little tube, and then slide on your belly, land in the pool. And boys are ripping around. I grab the inner tube, like, ready, here we go.
Oh.
And you run up to the slip and slide of the first. It took a while to get moving, and then you run up to it, and you stop at the beginning of the slip and slide. You're like, no, I'm not gonna go. And you back up and you go again, and then you end up getting it. But we're all, I think you were kind of like, you were vulnerable enough to go there and show that you were like a little scared, and to even just say you do it in the first place. But what I also wanted to make sure that you knew that day was that not to feel bad, in fact, to feel like the brave one, because that was not hard for me.
Yeah, you aced it. It was
it's
beautiful.
I don't know if I aced it, but I had no problem doing it. So,
right.
Meaning it was not hard for me.
Yeah.
So like you're there feeling like, oh my, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, that was hard for you. Like that was way more brave than what I did.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Because I appreciate, because you actually felt into me then, and you know me so well, and you're like, I get that this is a different level for Stacey than it is for me. And that's you just empathizing and just really being in tune. And yet it was so fun, and it was so free. And I mean, I literally, not only did I end up, I ran, stopped, turned around because I felt like I didn't have enough speed to go. So then I redid it. And then I actually landed on the slip and slide, and I got all the way to the end, and I didn't make it in the pool. That was even more funny, because it was actually being okay with that, because my fear is not really what's going to happen on the slip and slide. It's like, if I just make a complete fool of myself. And you want to know what I did? And you all were cheering me on, and it was fabulous.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But those are simple things where I notice for myself, really how I've altered who I am, and how I am not being authentic. And some I'm really unconscious to it. And the more attention I'm paying attention to, like the more space I'm holding around it for myself, the more I notice it in little things. It can be big things, but it also can be little things. So there's a freedom that comes.
Well, it's when we can start to nurture those triggers and projections, and start to like get rid of them, essentially, right? Like to be able to live with them and not be triggered and not project. We then make more space for love and empathy.
And play and
joy. Exactly. Because you spend less time protecting yourself. Yeah. Like by being triggered and then projecting, or protect, or like not withdrawing, or whatever it may be, or causing a problem, whatever it is that you do. And you just have more room to see the other person for who they are, instead of like you. Instead of it just being about you, like, oh, you made me feel like this. It's like you didn't make, nobody made you feel any one way. So then you just are seeing them.
Yeah. You're exact. And that is such a gift, because this is doing our own work around finding our authentic selves, healing, self-love, all these terms, right, that are out there. It's so big, because though it seems so much about us as individuals and energetically, it literally shifts everything around you. So our relationship has upgraded. All of my relationships with my family, with my husband, with our friends, as we go through this journey and we become more vulnerable and we feel more, and we're more comfortable being goofy or saying things that we don't know how it's going to be received. But being there naturally, as you see me, you're like, oh, Stace, I actually see you more, because you can tell there's something that's not here. It's an energetic presence that from soul to soul that we're here and we're together. And so it's a really beautiful thing to see the upgrades that happens, not only for ourselves, but everyone around. And some things also might fall aside. So some relationships will elevate and some might not. And that's also okay too. There's no room for, as we get more connected to our authentic selves and we have more boundaries and we speak our voice more, it might not be aligned with people that we've always had, or some people might just need some space from it. It's just experiences that I've had for myself. Through this process, like my sister and I have a great relationship, but I do find that we are treading a little bit lighter, so we make sure that we can hear each other as we're in our own healing journeys, and we're both kind of working on feeling versus trying to understand. I know I am with her, and so that's an example of that. And just knowing that love is always there, but it's okay to have a little space if needed.
Yeah.
While we're doing it.
I think that I think we do a lot of the same things when it comes to self-practice to create that awareness about who we are as our authentic self. But I guess I would just quite simply just state that I believe that relationships are necessary to help us to realize where our weaknesses are, AKA triggers, and where we project and where we put our shield up, put our armor up. So relationships are an integral part of it. And that's why they say, especially your partnership, like your husband or your wife or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, that usually is the most beneficial partner to learning these things. But I would also say, just from my experience, is that I think that it can be done in partnership for sure, but it's going to take I would say it might take a little longer, and it's going to take some efforted solo time. So it's to, have someone shine the light through being the mirror for you, from being the person so that can help you recognize, where you get triggered and when you project. And but then to be able to, you need the space. That's all I'm going to say, is that you really need some solo time to be able to unpack it, to be able to know who you are, right? I think that's the most important thing, is you just know who you are, know what you like to do, know what you're willing to put up with, know what you deserve, know what your rhythms and patterns throughout the day are. How do you like your day to even go? And, you tend to, become your more authentic self when you do those things more often, and then let that energy accelerate.
Yeah.
I love to ask people the question, what do you think we're here for? What's the point of all this? And my answer at this point in time, because I'm open-minded, I'm always willing to allow that to change, is I've said that I think that we're here as humans to experience duality. That since we have choice, sort of the choices that create our reality, and there's a learning process. And so, the spectrum being obviously all the way from bliss and joy and happiness and love, to grief, sadness, sorrow, shame, regret, anger, envy, like to really feel both ends of the spectrum. And I think that as I have opened up more, opened my heart more, felt more, my duality window is widening. Like if you stay safe all the time and protect yourself, you never end up getting to feel like real true connection and joy.
Yeah.
You also don't, because you're trying to save yourself from the misery.
Yeah.
Right. Even though people that sometimes sort of almost make themselves miserable or like reside in some low level misery, it's because they've also told themselves, I think, that if they stay there, then it won't get worse, right? Like I don't want to allow myself an even level of vulnerability because I don't want it to get any worse than here. So I think that as we get more open and vulnerable, and as we get more connected with our true self and connect with other people, we feel a bigger window of that. And so, for me, so the word I want to talk about is duality, because with the words that we were going to do, I was like, I wanted to do joy. And then, but joy is basically what, for me, I felt all the way from, I would say grief to joy have been, grief doesn't even seem to justify how awful it's kind of been at times, but joy does, where there's just these moments where, I've felt like the simplest, in the simplest things have felt like the deepest level of connection and happiness and joy and like contentment, almost like there's a level of feeling so content, so much gratitude, and just like a little bit more of an overwhelming amount of love than normal, and like a real like transcendence of energy and feeling and emotion. But I don't think that I would have got there without sort of the opening and without being on the other side of things. And so, duality is this thing where I think that we're, again, maybe the root of what to talk about is like this idea that we need to keep ourselves safe. And so as I'm like saying that I need to get used to my word of the year, like acclimate to it, because as frustrating and sad as it is that that there's been so much grief, and I remember journaling a while back, and I was sort of doing some soul journaling, as we do, and asking my higher self or my soul, my inner child, whatever you want to call it, like, will I ever feel better? Will this go away? And the answer was no. And I was like, fuckity fuck. And then quickly came in, which doesn't usually happen, but like a question, but it was kind of part of the answer of like, no, you won't feel better about this. But the other side of it was, but aren't you feeling more joy now too? And the answer was, of course, yes, I am. And so it's kind of getting comfortable being uncomfortable and continuing to expand what that is, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, we can spend a lot of our time in life trying to keep things comfortable. Which kind of seems like that's why we're here. We're here to do better, and we're here to make everything perfect, and everything should look a certain way and feel and be a certain way. But that in itself has its own rigidity and like not authentic space to be in. And so when I think the truth is shown to us, which typically will always come through because that's not reality, right? Living in perfectionism, living just in the perfect comfort, right? Like the in between. Yeah. Because if you're only in that space, then you're never growing, right? You're never evolving. And in order to grow and evolve, we have to be able to feel the pain. We have to be able to be in the light, but also be willing to be in the dark and see what that is and feel what that is and feel it with others and most importantly ourselves, and hold space for it without like severe shame and everything that's going to keep us to go back into that perfect exterior. Like, what do we do to keep everything looking so perfect on the outside? So no one knows, even though I feel this, and then the shame just eats away at you and resent. I mean, it's this amazing. So yeah, so you to be in such a vulnerable space, to be allowing yourself to process the feelings from the beautiful to the extreme joy to the depths of deep, deep, deep grieving. Being brave enough to be in those two, and the duality of it is what's giving you a whole new perspective. And I feel just a level of reverence for us being here, for being human, and not only from our experience, but from everyone's experience. This seems to be here for a reason, and we're feeling it at numerous times, including what's happening right now in this year. There's extreme discomfort, and there's extreme duality that's being shown. So, and what do we do in those spaces? Do we react, or do we sit with it? Do we journal? Do we allow ourselves to process the feelings and know that these are our feelings and it's okay to have? Right. So it's so much of that is so different than us trying to not feel, trying to hide it from other people, trying to not react and project onto other people also. So, yeah, I think it's a really good word to sit with and talk about and feel into, because we don't realize when we're not able to see the duality and be comfortable to be in it, how we can show up and how we can react. And how we limit ourselves.
And how we see other people in those spaces. So a couple things that came through for me at the very beginning with all of this grief, which you were a firsthand witness for. I remember one of the first things was understanding how, like, it gave me insight into humanity by allowing myself to grieve that deeply and feel that deeply. Some of it was allowed, some of it was forced, but sometimes we have to be thrust into stuff. Is that, like, one of the things was, I remember feeling like, one of the things that I always, I'm very, self-aware of my body and, with food and fitness. And I remember, like, I can be a little judgmental in that area then, because I judge myself that way. And so I remember, not being able to eat and feeling really so sad and so uncomfortable and grieving so much. And then I remember having this new perspective now when you look at bodies, and, like, I was losing weight, but I didn't even want to look in the mirror, because I'm like, this isn't, like, I didn't want this to happen. Like, this is from sadness, not from, like, discipline or hard work or happiness. Right. And so I remember thinking to myself, this is like a little it was like an opening for me into empathy to go, maybe you just didn't look at everyone that looks the way you think you want to look, because what it takes to get there might not be what you want. There you go. Right. So sometimes behind someone that you see might be a lot of sadness, might be unhealthy habits or disorders, or of an issue. Maybe they're sick, right? You have no idea what it is, but to understand it, like, gave me that insight into the fact that, not everything is as it seems. It's not actually, nothing is as it seems exactly. So to have a little bit more love and compassion in that area. And then the other one was just feeling the level of sadness that I had, again, because, it comes through this, like, extreme duality, and feeling literally like I can be, me. I can be like, I'm super direct. And I'm also like, well, just suck it up, buttercup, like, get it together, just try harder. Like, you remember me birthing that saying, try harder, which is a good one for a lot of stuff. But I remember feeling so much sadness, and I felt literally like no hope. Like, it was the worst day of my life. It was the day we got home from the trip. And, like, I was the worst. I mean, I will not be able to articulate, like, You saw me, but like, it was like, it's like, I can't even give you a total feeling as to how it was, but it was the worst. It was literally the worst day of my life. And just like no hope. That was the other thing, no hope. And so in that moment, I had the insight into understanding how people would, I have an incredible support team. I have so many loving people and so much good in my life. Like, I really have an amazing life and so much. And so it was like, wow, but if you imagine, like, if someone didn't and they had less friends or less means or less, space to deal with it, or like whatever, like less than I had, like how you can see how people don't want to keep going.
Yeah.
Like, I think someone said to me, like, call me to make sure, like, call me if anything happens. Like, I think they were seriously worried about me being, doing something really silly and dramatic, and like, not silly is not the right word. They probably were worried about me doing something out of character that was in light of, like, because of my sadness. And so you kind of get an insight into suicide and to, the other things that people would do to feel something or to get out of it. And so, those are sort of the things that I might be able to be, a little bit more judgmental in the past about. But like, so through the duality came a lot of empathy.
For sure. When you get to experience that yourself,
yeah,
it allows you to have a whole other experience that there's no room for judgment. That goes out the door. It's like, when it is your experience, it's a reality check like no other. And I remember that day very, very well. And you were in a very, very vulnerable space, but you were asking, and you wanted to be in the uncomfortable space. You wanted, it's not that it was almost like it was no more answers. It was just kind of, it was a very, like, even though it was so sad, you were so open. It's like you said, it's very hard to articulate. And you even bringing this up here is
I can tell you can feel me.
Yeah. I'm like, whoo, Stacey, keep it together. We're not going to put the water on yet.
I'm telling that to myself, and I think you're feeling me too.
So it's very courageous of you to share this, because there are so many out there who have been in, including myself, in moments of deep despair where hope does not feel at all obtainable. And for someone in your life and your capability and just everything that you embody to be so open and to share that you felt this level that also opened you up to a whole nother level of empathy, but that you were in it, and you called your support team what you needed. You vocalized to me. We spoke to Haley. You were with your mom. You talked to your mom. Like you made, and that's what's important in these times is, as much as we talk about solo, when I feel like in our dark places, like in a lot of our shadow stuff that we're doing, to make sure that we have a support system, whether it's a therapist, a best friend, your parents, anyone who you trust, that it's okay to ask for help, because everyone is here with an open heart and open arms with love. And I think that was very big for your healing, and has opened so much for you through your own experience.
It showed me that too. It showed me what it means to hold space for someone. It showed me what it means to, put yourself totally aside. And it gave me, I like very rarely really want to put myself where I'm very people pleasing, codependent, right? So to just let people just take care of me was uncomfortable too. So it made me realize that it's okay, like, to do, like, I had to have it, but then it gave me more comfort to ask for help. And then it also showed me what it means, and it was demonstrated how to do it. which I don't think, because I've not asked for it, I also don't know how to do it. Does that make sense? Right.
Yeah.
So that expanded. Like, I'm sure that I'm not a
1000%.
total dick, right? So I think I'm not a total dick.
No.
So, you know, when you
You're
like,
not. You're
again, it's kind
amazing.
of pushing those boundaries. Like, I take care of you little, like, you know, it's like, you know, I've just expanded my ability to hold space and have empathy, as well as ask for what I need and allow. Right. So like those got pushed too. So it's like, and it's a really useful range. Like, imagine, like, okay, here's a funny little like analogy. So we see and we hear in the very smallest spectrum, right? Like, of the total spectrum of all the sort of ultraviolet rays, like gamma rays, whatever, we see a tiny, tiny little bit. And the same thing with hearing. And so, imagine now that what if we got to tap into, what if we could see infrared, right? What if we could hear, what if you could hear these crystal bowls right now that are actually singing in the background as we talk, because our voices, our energy's hitting them. Yep. Like they, you know, what if you could hear that? What if all these things expanded? And to me, that is how it feels with duality, is that like you're getting to experience being a human on a much grander scale.
On a much grander scale. And I think that being able to feel, and for us to experience duality and to have an emotional body, is part of why we're here as human. I mean, there is an emotional intelligence to that, but we're more taught about our mental intelligence, or that's more celebrated, or more of like the goals. Again, nothing wrong with that, but where is our emotional intelligence, and how come that isn't celebrated in that way? And that's where therapy and a lot of this work in school, the interiority that we're doing, right, exactly, is being able to have that emotional intelligence. And it's not to ace it or to win it. Everyone's experience is different. Everyone's emotional intelligence is different, but I feel it's why we are here as humans, to have that. It's another level of sensitivity that literally attunes us to everything that you were just talking about. So when we get our armor down, and when we go into these very vulnerable spaces and feel the depths of despair, it cracks you open to a whole new level that we've never experienced. The only thing I can think of, and I don't know, because we don't remember being born, right? Like, I mean, I don't remember being born, but I would think that level of like, what is this that you're coming into? Right. So we experience this as adults through, relationships and careers and our own expressions and our own mistakes and whatever that is, to not be afraid or shamed by it, but to be grateful that we're able to be in this space and feel it and be with it, and know that that's here so we can grow and expand, so we can raise our emotional intelligence. That's what I'm hearing from you. What happened from not just the whole experience, but that day, is that there was a depth of empathy, and not just for others, but for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's raised you to a whole new connective level that you're having with everyone that you're around, including as simple as plants and life and the sun and the moon. You know, it's like you're feeling there's a new sensory that you've allowed yourself to be fully vulnerable in that space. Yeah. And you've done great things to continue your practice as you're stepping into this rawness that's been a bit unknown to you at this level emotionally. And you've added things that's given you support. Yeah. Which is huge. And that's what we're talking about, you know, to help people too, is like, you know, what is it that you do that you feel supporting you in the space as you're kind of like a newborn baby emotionally, right?
As you would say, birthing. You always talk about birthing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I actually would say that one of the things that I'm trying to do a good job of is, because I understand, because I've been on sort of processing and unpacking so much of sort of the traumas. And again, every time I say that word, I feel like I have to say they don't have to be like a car crash or someone dying. Trauma is just like some emotional imprint from something that happened in your life. Could be small, could be like a guy breaking up with you and something he said and you never forgot. Like it could be, you know, it doesn't have to be big. It could. So anyway, I feel like because I've had to do so much, because there's so much work around that for me and understanding. So trying to identify patterns, why I have certain patterns in my life, and why I'm triggered in certain ways and what I'm projecting. I think, you know, why I'm projecting that I want to keep everything at the surface as much as possible. So I keep up with it. So I, you know, meditate in the morning, sometimes journal, or sometimes only journal. So meditation, journal in the morning. And then, you know, doing sort of that somatic, you know, breath, like somatic sound work to try and process emotions. So I do that with the class or sometimes with body work, and doing a lot of things that I love to do that keep my energy up, and keep me positive and keep me. So it's a lot about identifying when you feel good, so that you can identify when you feel bad.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So it's because I think it can get a little murky, like to understand like when you actually feel good, when you feel bad. So when you do things that's why being alone really does kind of help, because you're only taking care of you, is that, you know, or very much only taking care of you. That during that time, you're only doing kind of whatever, you're just doing whatever you want to do. And so once you start to do that more and more, you start realizing what it is that makes you happy. And so identifying the difference between what feels good and what doesn't feel good is part of the duality. Understanding how it feels in your body then is kind of like, you know, it's a big step, but it's next level to understand how it resonates in your body. If you feel like a tension, a tightening, an apprehension, a fear, versus like an excitement and a hope and like a longing, or like a pleasure or like joy from it, or an excitement level, like understanding the difference. So it's just kind of, yeah, I think it's, you know, there's so many little things along the way, but, you know, meditation, journaling, breath, sound, nature, a lot of the same things that you do.
Yeah.
I think are all really, and then just really like learning yourself, so that you can.
And what about, are you working with someone to support you through
Oh
this
yeah,
too?
that's right. Yeah, I do online therapy. I do talk therapy. So yeah, I've done like online courses.
It's okay to bring in that third party.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the self stuff is wonderful and great.
Yeah.
But to be able to support, for me, a lot of the emotions that come through that, it takes having that third person, therapy wise, to help.
Someone objective. I agree. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And I also, it's good to mention, just because, it's funny. I remember talking to my mom about, you know, this summer, because again, like here I am unpacking all this shit. And so I remember asking if she ever thought about doing therapy with Dad ever. Yeah. And she was like, oh no. And it was like the response I guess I probably thought I'd get, but it was such a big response. And then she was like, well, it's not that I wouldn't, it just like, that's just not something that we did. And it was just like back, you know, decades ago, you only went if you were like, had real problems. Like you were addicted to something, or you had some, like, maybe it was like a much more of a, what we would think of as a trauma, like rape, or, you know, child molestation or something like that. Right. Or you were weird. I think that was also maybe just like part of what people thought that you went to therapy for. I think like really troubled.
A lot was kept private.
Yeah.
A lot was kind of swept under the rug.
Yeah.
And our family business is no one else's business. So you don't share in that way. And I just think it's a cultural change that is happening. That's thankfully that's being asked, where it's more open, that therapy is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It is essential. It elevates everybody's relationship, including with yourself, but with everyone around you. But I would say that with my mom also. She didn't go to therapy with my dad. And yet she's been so supportive with me and is so curious and always asks. Matter of fact, she went to therapy with me. It's just so good. And my husband and I are big on that too, for our relationship. But for mine solely, it's such an important thing. And I'm grateful you shared that, because I just think that it's unpacking the fact that it's not this idea or like it's a shameful thing.
Yeah,
that it's
totally.
It's a very healthy medicinal way for us to.
And then also like to sort of like wrap up kind of the things that you can do to sort of nurture, take care of, and learn how to deal with the duality that's happening in your life. If you're allowing yourself to really open up, there can be some things that you really wish you had a chance to talk about or have some objective for, is the idea that, so I went to therapy way back in the day when I was married, which people don't even know that about me, really. Some people don't even know that, but was for 7 years and went the whole time. And I got a little jaded on it. Like, fuck therapy, like probably stayed too long, like it, I just kind of thought, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to have to do that anymore. And so didn't do it for a long time, but it goes then, but what I think is really critical that your mom said to you that I ended up realizing for myself is that therapy doesn't need to be to like process whatever's going on in your relationship. Yeah, it can be a part of that, but way better than that, because you can't change someone. Way better than that is the inside job on yourself and understanding how you're contributing to the problem, because you are.
1,000%.
And so your mom said to you, what did your mom say to you? Because I realized that like, screw therapy to talk about someone else. That's when you have anyone else in the picture other than yourself, you can't guarantee a fix.
Yeah.
You can only guarantee the fix if it's you and you're in control. You've only got you. You've only got you.
Yeah. So I had been going for, a couple years, and my mom there were times where it was for my marriage and my family. I have a beautiful stepdaughter, and we were working on that family dynamic. So it was a lot on making sure that was a healthy space for everybody involved. But there were definitely, mom being my mom, she's also my business partner. So she sees everything, but she's super in tune with me. And she's, well, how was therapy? I'm like, well, we've learned this and it was good. And we're applying this and we're working on that. And she was like, so when do you work on you? And I was like, well, maybe next time. and literally I would go and I was saying, I will make that a point. But there was kind of so much going on. This is not it. It's just, I actually changed therapists. There was so much that was going on in our dynamic. We really needed like a family therapist. It was very supportive, but I needed a solo therapist for me. And so the same would happen. But when are you going to work on you, Stace? But okay, that's great. But when are you going to work on you? Because she could tell
your mom,
she was losing me. She is. She isn't. She definitely is the backbone that gave me the courage to do that. And I had other life circumstances within the marriage and things where it just literally forced it to get a new therapist and to, so speaking of, the duality, right, that showed itself. And that's when I finally got a therapist for myself and started working on me. And it wasn't about saving my marriage. It was about saving myself and finding out where did I lose myself and my self-worth, because I was trying to be something. So not me.
You've only got you, and you've got you. You just have to learn how to,
you too.
Learn how to nurture that.
We're doing it.
So my word of the year is feel. So as you know, like I totally wanted to change my word of the year from feel to something else because I was feeling so much. And then we decided, actually, you recommended it. You said, I don't think you should change your word of the year. I think you should add something to your word of the year. So I changed it to feel joy because I was really sick of feeling like shit.
Yeah.
So feel, you are like the ultimate feeler. I feel like you should talk about feel. I do. I think you should, because, we did that podcast with Lisa and Adam, and for their Holy Human podcast, if anyone wants to listen to that. And yours was on, we talked about you being an empath a lot, and I was super educated. And so I feel as though that's kind of what it's implying when you feel, is that you're really connecting with your body and you're, getting more information about the situation than using your head.
You're spot on.
So
yeah,
talk about feeling, like truly feeling.
Well, I think for me, truly feeling, because it's something I've always been in tuned with, but labeled being too sensitive. So it's interesting as I've become older to really accept it as a gift versus being feeling like really sheltering myself around it. Because when you feel so much, it's not only words and actions of people, but we feel energetically. And it also can get a little bit confusing just in the normal navigation of being human and like going to school, because we're using our minds so much and we're taught academically to be using our minds so much and going into those things, versus actually, which is important. We need balance. But when you're in a space where you can really feel and you're tuning out from the mind and what we think preconceived ideas are or how people are thinking of us, it really helps us feel into being present with someone and being present with yourself. And it can take time to learn how to do that, like for you, because you're so strong and you're so determined and you're so driven, and you use your mind so much. So as you're bringing your word of the year in as feel, it helps you, and you'll have to tell me if this feels right for you, but just pause a little bit, have a little bit more patience and feel into experiences that are happening for you. And I always say, I think we mentioned our last podcast, it's, instead of listening from the mind, it's, feeling from our heart. And what is that heart guidance that we're feeling? So it takes a little bit of practice. And for me, I've had to use accepting feeling as a gift, but then also knowing that it doesn't mean that I'm not intelligent. And because
it goes slower, right? Is that what makes you feel less intelligent?
Yeah.
I feel
I'm
like
not as quick to answer on things. I feel into, if you're asking me, where should we go to dinner or what should we do? It takes me a little bit and I pause to check in to see what feels comfortable for me. Where normally if I was really connected and up here and things were firing quickly, I should definitely be able to answer quicker and kind of tune into that.
Now, you kind of, you casually say feel into, but that's not very descriptive. Like that's not super helpful for someone who's like, oh, so think about it. You know what I mean? Like feel into is different than think about. Explain what the difference is for you. When you say feel into it, like what is the actual process that's happening that allows you to tap into more of the emotional body and the more of how the body feels versus what the mind is thinking?
Yeah.
Or do they do you need them both? And it's like when we're talking to Adam and Lisa, it was like there's the delay can be the difference between it entering as a thought, like, oh, where do you want to go to dinner? And then you have a check-in process through the body that a lot of people bypass or have never learned to use.
Yeah. I think you described it beautifully, because I do have a conditioned mind and a conditioned way of being due to being so sensitive and feeling so deeply at a young age that my mind will be the first thing to come in. And as Elisa says, like the little gremlins and say, is that going to make that person happy? That kind of goes into codependency stuff that I'm working with on myself anyways, but
me
my
too,
mind,
me too.
Yeah. It's like, we understand that. So my mind can kind of go into that. So would that feel good for Danica? Would that feel good for my dad? Would that feel good for my mom? If we're looking on deciding where are we going to eat or what or vacation wise. And so I'll get a hit right from my mind that comes in. And a lot of it is, the conditioning and my subconscious. And so to kind of tap out of that, I can hear it. It gets busy. And you'll notice I'll close my eyes and I kind of just pause. And right then, the minute that I allow to feel in that way, and so it's going to be different for everybody. Not everyone needs to close their eyes. A lot of the times you're going to be able to hear stuff and then it's going to come through. You can be that direct, which I think you can be. It can be super intentional. Like you can switch to know from here to here. So I think it's about having awareness of when we notice when our mind's coming in, and are we choosing from our mind, because that's natural. That's how we're taught from a young age. And then we can choose to stay in that space. We can choose to balance it with feeling our guidance and feeling energetically, what does that really feel like from our authentic selves versus pleasing, or is it the right thing to do, or afraid of what judgments might come in if I say the wrong thing. These are all things that I've had. I've had from being so sensitive. So all the labels I've given myself of,
funny you gave them to yourself.
Yeah, they were my labels that I put on. I'm dyslexic, so I have a learning disability, and there are numerous things. Like I didn't do well in school. I was really challenged with books. I did really well hands-on, but with tests and things like that, it was very challenging for me. So there were a lot of things where I wasn't fitting in or falling into the norm. So I gave myself these labels. How
sad this school can make us feel like that. Because I think a lot of people can probably relate, either someone, listening that went to school or have kids in school. It's like, my kid, it's like, no, it's not that I'm not bright or they're not bright. It's just that just because I don't fit into this container box of what you're considering smart does not mean I'm not.
Yeah, I'm very lucky that my mom was really, she could tell that my sensitivities were a gift. She could tell that the compassion and the softness that I had, there was something special, and I'm really artistic and creative. My sister's wonderfully book smart. I mean, so inspiring, incredibly athletic. And those are all things that don't come naturally for me, like my hand-eye coordination. And so it's such a different space and navigating being young and getting into high school and just kind of evolving from that and then into a career space, and how can I use my gifts and not feel hindered by it. And it's been a very interesting process. And I think for school, what's great is there are a lot of different types of schools that you can go to that actually tap into people that are more creative, that are more naturally like super feeling based, which is how they can express so much through art, written words and poetry. And there are schools that are great for really academic based, where your mind is turned on and needs to be challenged. So, I think that they're working on creating more of a variety of schools for people. And so to have parents that can be in tune with, I notice that my daughter or my son is struggling in this way. What my mom always did was check in with me. And what is that? Because I was always a CD student. So I was very lucky that I didn't get punished. They always held me accountable to raise my grades up. But they also, my mom just,
I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
it's no wonder why you have why you want to give yourself labels. Like I'm with dyslexia, like I have a learning disability and that's why I didn't do, that's no wonder. But I mean, you have excelled in so many other areas that, I love the idea of, I read something where it was like, don't take score too early. And I was like, oh God, that's so great. Right. Because in life we want something and then we didn't get it, or, this isn't working out. But then, fast forward X amount of time later, all of a sudden you go, oh, I'm so glad that worked out like that. And it's, similarly, if school is a struggle, like don't take score too early and call yourself something or concede.
Yeah.
How many people concede and just say like, well, I guess I'm just not smart. I'll just take this job, instead of feeling into what it is that they love. So for me, I think that feeling at, young age was probably overwhelming. And there's probably a lot of people that listen that are like this. And, they had a hard time and felt really emotional. I think that's the crazy one that I've started experiencing as I feel more this year is that I have a hard time telling the difference sometimes between my emotions and someone else's emotions. Like all of a sudden I'll just get get this wave of anxiety, which I've never had anxiety in my life, or this wave of sadness or something like that. And I'll be like, where's this coming from?
Yeah.
And I will say too, this is like something kind of interesting too, is that you don't always have to be with the person for it to happen.
Yeah.
Understanding that, if you get a little bit more into the sort of the quantum realm, like, and entanglement and all kinds of other big words that are like way out there in science, or quantum science, that it's, we have entanglement with people, and we are connected energetically with, well, if you believe in the saying that we're all one, then we're connected with everything, which is why maybe you can watch a, field of trees get plowed down and actually go like, that's so sad. Who cares? You're not going to climb that tree, right? You're not hanging out in that woods, but like you have a connection, but it's more strongly, of course, like you can feel that a lot with people. And so I've been feeling that too, where I'm like, where did this energy from? And realizing that I'm at times maybe feeling someone else and not myself. And so I need to learn the difference between like what's mine and what's theirs, which no wonder why, if this happens to you when you're a kid, like very freaking confusing, right? I mean, super confusing to go to school, to be around people. And, you seem like a basket case or like, a recluse. And
totally, that would be me. Is that I really stayed home because I didn't feel that I fit in anywhere. And so I felt very safe in my nurtured space and could be free to express myself and be, and felt a lot more expressive in that way. But again, those are conditions that I also put on myself. I mean, I was never kind of told to be that way. It's just where I felt I could breathe and where I could be. So I agree. I think that also what you're feeling with your word of the year with feel is you're starting to really tap into your empathy. So when you speak about the trees, though you might not be climbing them and having that goal to do it, you're just feeling that connectedness that you just mentioned, that we are all one and we're all energy. But you're now you have this depth of empathy. So whether it's trees or you're experiencing it in other relationships and other things, you're feeling it to a whole new level.
I remember what you told me a long time ago. This was, I think this is probably after my 3 lifetimes ago relationship ended. And I was like, everything is brighter. Like the flowers are more colorful. The trees are more green. And you said, and it never left me, because this is obviously a really long time ago. You said, you're starting to see things through God's eyes, like through Source's eyes. You're starting to see things from there. And I was like, huh. And so as anyway, so I think that's kind of also what if you like tap into that connectedness idea of everything, like that's, and we're all energy, the highest form of source energy or God or whatever you want to call it. And so like everything does get more real and raw as it is. And so feels just been overwhelming. It's anybody that's going down that road or has been on that path. I mean, it's just a lot. It's a lot to handle. And there's understanding what to do with it, how to deal with it. And then just simply for me, just learning how to feel into it. So also for me, something that's also happened with feelings is that, I actually get, and I don't know, maybe this resonates with other people, but I will get a feeling in my body, and for me, it's in my solar plexus, but maybe someone else, it might be your heart, or it might be your sacral, or maybe it's in your throat. Like people that have a hard time, like maybe it's your voice or like, something there, headaches, whatever it is, whatever chakra in your body is sort of lighting up for whatever one lights up for you most. But for me, it's always the solar plexus. And I'm not an expert on this by any means, but each one of them I think might have a little bit more of a different directive. Like maybe fear comes more from the solar plexus, and like, sadness comes from the heart. I'm not sure, but that might also be a way to know. But I'll get a really big indication in my body, and I'll feel a lot of discomfort. So for me, it'll sort of materialize as a knot in my stomach, or difficulty digesting things, or then at the most extreme, like nausea and the inability to like stand up, where it's that bad. And so that, that's been happening to me for a while, where you get that, you get a feeling in your body, and then it arrives in my mind, and there's like no fixing that. It seems like that's how it works for me. I feel it in my body before I know it in my mind. And so that's another indicator in the feel world. But I think also, like, to sort of turn a little bit, is I believe that we're a lot of us, and I'm included, and I don't think anybody wants to cry, right? Like, nobody really wants to like cry or be super vulnerable in that way. But I've made a real good peace with crying. I'm a real good crier now,
and I enjoy crying. But but my nickname's Boo Boo, so you know that. So like, I mean, I love crying, but and I know for you, you're learning how to be comfortable with crying and allow yourself. I don't want to like totally pivot, but I wanted to go back to you talking about how you feel it first, and then it goes to your mind and the visceral reactions that you're having. When you're in those moments, what do you then do? What comes up for you?
Well, it was very confusing at first. I'm sure you can remember times in the past where I'm like, I don't know, I feel like I ate a strawberry and I feel like I'm going to like die right now. And so now when it happens, in fact, it happened the other day, and I was in this very room, and I got this knot in my stomach, and I had ate nothing weird. And I think that's a part of it too, is that when you get that connected with your body, and you're that, conscious of what you put into it,
which you are,
get you know when it's random, because you're like, I've ate that about 7,000 times, and I've never felt like this. So anyway, I was feeling this super big knot in my stomach. And so I just went, as it came on, I was like, okay, well, I know what you are. And so then I was just kind of like, you kind of like surrender to the feeling and know that something might be coming, and you just go, all right, well, I'm ready for whenever that wants to come through. And so I was in this room, and I was doing something on the floor. I was organizing some drawers in here in my fancy little office. And I felt so horrible that I had to lay down. And as I just kind of laid down, and actually I didn't get a big download of information at that very moment before it passed, but I just allowed myself the ability to rest. And, resting is, I'm really shitty at resting too, like really bad at that. So I just
that narrative, because you just did it.
Yeah. And I just,
while you were in a busy state, and you took time you felt something, you paused, you allowed it to express itself, and then you surrendered, and you rested. That's huge.
So I just,
for you, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing this, because this is a very good experience in articulation of how to tap into feeling in the body when something's coming through.
So it's almost hard to know exactly, because I've had so much come through. Like, this has been the best and worst summer of my entire life. And I've experienced like such extreme duality with emotions, all the way from like the deepest sadness to like greatest joy in the simplest things, much more often. And so, did anything come through? It could have come through within the days after, because I did actually have a couple of downloads within the next couple of days with some of the other practices I have. So maybe just it was like me allowing my body to just kind of rest in that moment instead of pushing through something was a little lesson from the universe, because what you resist persists. And so I rested, and it felt better. But that's like that. So that's what happened. That was the most recent time. But I'm getting better at understanding what it means and surrendering. So, you kind of asked what comes up for me, is that I'm doing a better job of, instead of pushing through, and I'll go in. So another option for someone that might have this happen is journaling or meditating or nature walk, like something that allows you to really have like better space, meaning from other people and obligations, so that you can kind of give yourself enough time for it to come through.
Yeah.
I've
It's so quiet.
Yeah.
And getting into where you're not having the distractions.
Yeah.
And it also takes a while to calm our mind down and our subconscious, and like to get everything, like to get into that consciousness space is what you're talking about with meditating, being in nature, journaling. Those are like 3 beautiful that if you're looking to tune into really feeling in that way, are a yes.
There's another one that I've started doing, and is, you know, you told me to do it and another friend told me to do it, and it's the class. And so Taryn Toomey started that a long time ago, and so you told me to do that back. It's so funny. Here's a good example of you totally feeling. So you're telling Steph and I about the class, and you're like, oh my God, you've got to watch this video, and it's like so emotional. You're like, I cried when I watched it, and you were trying to find this video, and I think you felt like you found it. And Steph and I, after you walked away, maybe you went to the bathroom or something, we looked at each other and we were like, what's wrong with her? There was nothing sad about that video at all.
And I came out, I think I went to go shower, and I came back out, and you, as you do so beautifully, you just share the truth, right? Like you just share. So, and you were like, yeah, I didn't get anything from that. I don't know what it was. Must be you and your feeling thing or whatever. And
no, I don't think I did. It was later on when I had done it that you go, oh my gosh, that's what I was telling you to do. Cause I forgot you told me, because it just didn't register. Right. It wasn't. And so this is also a little like side note, is that when you have something happen as an observation and you think about it, but then you connect it with then there's a feeling connected with it. So for you, you saw it, you felt something and felt emotional. So you didn't forget, but you said it. And then we watched it. There was no feeling connected. It was just like cognitive information, but didn't get into the body, didn't get in. And so I forgot that you said it. And so, and that's also what trauma is too. Like people get scared of that word, but trauma being like when something happens that you have a big feeling or correlated with it. Well, when it's a bad thing, then as you go through life, anything that happens that sort of triggers that memory then you'll go to that feeling, and it's as if you're stuck at that age. So, you know, that's a little thing too. If you see somebody reacting in a really childish way to something, you go, oh wow, they have a trauma when they were, let me guess, 6, because they're acting like a toddler, an adolescent. So anyway, but that's all trauma is too, is just like a thought that goes into the body as a feeling, and then it gets stuck and stored there. It's just stuck energy. Yeah. And so then it was later on that I'd actually done the class, and I had told you about it, forgot that you had mentioned it. And you said, that's what I was telling you about. And you said, I must have been feeling into what the power of the class was and what they offer and what it brings out in people, that emotional. You were emotional.
Yeah.
So
I cried watching just like their like little 10-minute promo for it. And I was like, woo! I mean, it was, and as I'm now like allowing myself to really be in that space of feeling, and it is so much more intense than I ever even remember it being. And so that's a really good example of it. And it was actually a really beautiful reflection just to see the difference. You know, we're always being offered opportunities to reflect back and to have tests. And I remember in that, I was like, that must have been what it was, because that also helps me tune in a little bit more to it's just bringing an awareness. So it's so natural for me that I'm not, it's kind of like,
right. It's like truth for me. Like I can't, it's like same thing. Like when it's your gift and when it's in your nature to know something, to just know, like you have a feeling is not something you effort for. Like I don't effort to know the truth. It's just kind of a knowing and an awareness that it gets really hard, that if people can help you sort of contribute just like that, to say like, yeah, that didn't seem very emotional. And then I go and do the class and I tell you about it. You're like, gosh, thank you. Because, you know, so anyway, the only thing that I'll say, the last thing I'll mention here about this sort of topic of feel is that I'm realizing too, in this is sort of like a new element to help me get to a feeling, get to an awareness, get to a knowing, get to information, is this sort of somatic element of voice, of using your voice, of audible sounds. So for anybody who's done the class, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you don't, then it's basically you'll be moving and, allowing yourself to add some voice in it. Like, actually, I'll tell you, the class does it, but this happened to me with Dusty in massage, which, we both know Dusty. And so she gets into this, she does somatic healing, but she also does body work. And so, which you referred me to her as well. And so I went in there sort of at the beginning of like all of my horrible summer activities. And I went in for massage, and she's like, I was kind of telling her some things going on, and she's like, okay. She's like, well, we'll just see what comes through. And so she's like, if something happens or something comes through, I keep working. So just stick with it. And I'm like, okay, which is fine for me. I'm like pretty decent, pretty good with all the whole emotion crap now. Mm-hmm. And so, especially when it's just girls and, someone, so I'm laying on the table, and she gets to the spot on my back that keep in mind, it's stuck energy. I've got this spot on my back, and she can't get through it. And she keeps working and working and working. And sure, it's still there, and I can feel it. I can feel what she's working on. And she goes, at some point in time, after doing some sounds, which is like, this is where it gets into the little bit of the hippie realm for people. Mm-hmm. Somatic is too, but she'll start to she used like a didgeridoo or like chimes or drums or something like that, or bowls, sound bowls or something like that, which is what these are. So can you hear them buzzing as we talk? They're actually lighting up. So anyway, it's our energy. Mm-hmm. So she goes, give this spot a sound. And so at first I kind of made a sound, and I was like, it's awkward, but you're like,
it is. Yeah.
I'm like, and then I was like, and so then I just felt something more coming. And then all of a sudden it was like, much bigger. It was like, and like a really big sound. And as soon as I did that, I started bawling. Mm. So that's an example of like adding a little bit of sound to your practice, to just sort of like really give yourself some private space where you can just kind of be ridiculous and feel really uncomfortable. And then you just kind of are just like, whatever you're doing, like maybe make some movements, or even just sit there and just, like whatever comes through for just let your body sound how it wants to sound. And what I've noticed with the class, as I do it more of as a practice now, is that it's almost like the door that unlocks the emotion, and it basically it makes it available.
Very available. It brings it right out.
Yeah. And so you give it some sound, opens the door, and then you stick with it. And then all of a sudden, I might cry. I usually cry. And then there's an awareness. There's a really simple sort of statement that comes through, or thought, where I'm like, that's what needed to come out.
Well, when you also open and you're creating more space as we vocalize and we're moving energy through our body, we're also allowing more to be able to receive in our body. So it's interesting, for all the workouts you've done that are incredible, and to have it at this level where they're doing it, where it's very unstructured, it's more of this fluid movement, but it allows the voice to come. I'm curious for you, how do you feel different because you get endorphins with both, right?
Sure.
I mean, for sure, you're traditional, but with this one, how does that feel for you? What's the difference between
working out and breathing heavy and making noise at times versus one of them? Well, it's that I'm allowing my body to express itself without any structure.
Woo! There you go.
Yeah. So there, with a workout, there's something next to do, right? And so you kind of know oh, this is hard. And you're like, but with that, it's allowing your body to not only sound, but move in a way that's, you would never want someone to videotape ever. You would just want you'd want no one to see what you're doing or hear what you're doing. So it's truly, truly, truly your body's pure expression. And so it's like you're tapping into more of your authenticity, which then probably peels away to the truth, to the emotion, and allows it to come through.
Beautiful.
Let's feel.
Let's feel.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.